Welcome to MMPQB, the Blotto episode. This week, Mr. Paul Rapp, also known as Lee Harvey Blotto, gives us the rundown on the meteoric rise of this legendary band. On the line with me this evening, very excited to have this gentleman on with me. He is formerly known as F. Lee Harvey Blotto, and of course, meaning he's a member of Blotto, one of the most legendary bands out of the New York Capital region, and just a generally super cool dude. Paul Rapp, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, MK. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on tonight. How's COVID for you? That's a weird question, but I always like to start there. What's this current climate like in your world?
Well, I work as an entertainment attorney, and everything kind of stopped in March. Everyone just kind of stopped doing anything. Everyone was afraid and kind of staying in their houses, and and that went for about 2 months, and then a lot of my clients, decided they had to reinvent themselves, in order to survive. Theatrical companies and musicians and writers, had to come up with an online strategy, and so that's been, I've been writing more terms, user terms and conditions for websites than I ever wanted to do, because that's horrible work. But all these companies are trying to make a move online, and so that's been keeping me busy.
Yeah. How is that going? Because my concern has been with everything being online that the field is going to be too crowded. So are you finding that your clients are able to make any money that way? Maybe that's too personal a question, but I'm just curious.
But it's too early to tell.
Yeah.
But they're trying, and they're doing some really inspired things, and it's kind of exciting. Nobody knows it's going to work. Nobody knows when we're going to be able to return to normal. Although the smart money is it probably won't be till 2022.
Yeah.
But for now, they're hustling and they're coming up with new ideas, and it's kind of inspiring, to see.
Yeah, there's been a lot of really great innovation, a lot of really great positivity too, especially in, a moment where it could be easy to kind of throw in the towel and say okay, there's no music industry anymore. But, people carry on, people find ways to do it. I actually last week went to a beautiful outdoor open mic for the first time. And it was so well done. It was, really, really thoughtfully done. They had a contact tracing sign-in form. Masks were enforced, except for the immediate stage area. All of the seating was really spaced out. There was plenty of room, not too many people, and it just felt so good to be, playing music and listening to live music. So, that's really heartening. Obviously, we're coming up on a chillier season when outdoor events won't be such a thing. But, if you can get out to an outdoor music thing that's run well and run safely while it's still nice out, I would recommend doing it.
Yeah, we've been to a bunch of them, and it's fun. And again, you for the first time ever, we've been deprived, for 6-8 months, and you go back into the scene, and you realize how important it was, how life affirming it was, and yeah, the coming months are going to be very interesting, because all of these outdoor shows suddenly aren't going to happen anymore. And I know someone that went to see Chris Thile at Mass Mocha, and it was limited to 50 people.
Yeah, God, that's not. And, yeah, I'm sure tickets sold in 30 seconds.
Yeah, and that's not sustainable. Unless you're selling tickets for $1,000 a piece.
Yeah.
And that's not sustainable. So, we'll see what happens. A lot of my music artists are really stepping up their online game. Some aren't. Some just don't seem to be interested. Some are kind of slowly getting themselves acclimated to putting on a quality online show, which requires a certain amount of acting, because you're basically playing to a camera, and you're not getting any immediate feedback, and so you have to act like you're excited to be in your living room playing to your camera, and that that's acting.
Totally.
That's all it is, and you have to get into the zone and put on a show. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think one of the people I've seen do that the most effectively is, do you know Adam from Low Cut Connie? You know that band?
Oh, I love Low Cut Connie.
Yeah, they're wonderful, and he's wonderful. He's such a showman, on and off stage, and he was one of the first people that I saw jump right into doing live stream concerts from his home. And initially it was just him; he was solo, and then as restrictions lifted a little bit, he got a couple of bandmates in there. But he's been doing it consistently, and giving every ounce of energy that he usually gives at his live shows, including, ripping his tank top off and sweating and jumping around on his piano. And I mean, he's really impressive. And I've only seen like one or two other artists kind of hit that level, including, do you know Mark Rebier? Is this somebody you're familiar with?
I know the name.
You would love him, I think. He's super creative. He's solo. He uses like a looper and a synth and just makes these beats and improvises lyrics over them. And he started doing also very early on in quarantine. He was doing what he called the Quarant Stream. And he would have his phone number on the screen and people would call him and he would pick up and like take suggestions for what to make a song about next and just improvise and like rap with people. It's so funny and good.
Oh, that's great. Have you seen any of Joey Eppert's shows online?
No, I should. What's he doing?
Oh, boy. I mean, he's your neighbor over there across the river. And his shows are, for me, the best produced, most professionally produced. I mean, he'll have 4 or 5 cameras. The sound is exquisite. And I mean, it's stunning, and he's, like everybody else, he's doing this because he has to. And his stuff is great. My buddy Ritz Carlton up in Albany has been doing karaoke nights where he dresses in a powder blue tuxedo and he's got his sunglasses and he's, he screams as much as he sings, and he's got a mirror ball and he's got lights and he's got audience noises, and it's this Monday night drinking party, and well, he's doing live karaoke, and that's been a lot of fun. And he reacts, people make comments and he's yelling shout outs and stuff, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds very surreal.
And some of these people, I think, realize that if they do it right, that they can do a show every week from their living room and make as much money as they were making going out playing crappy clubs and sleeping on floors and eating bad food, and some people are actually making that happen. You have to have the built-in audience, to start. You have to have done your homework, but I know plenty of people that are making it work. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think people are being pretty generous as much as they can. I've kicked in, 10, 15, $20 to a live stream, that I was enjoying, just thinking like, you guys are making the effort to do this for us. And, if I have 10 extra bucks, I'm happy to throw it your way because, it's never cheap. It's never free to play a show, even if it's in your living room.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, when they're clients or friends, it's kind of like they know you're on there watching. So
yeah, that too.
You better kick in a Jackson.
Yeah, they're gonna know if you don't. Well, so Paul, I would love to talk about some Blotto if you will humor me. I want to tell the story a little bit of how you and I first started talking. It was when I was first working at the radio station and I started playing some local music on the air. And I was aware of you guys from my mom's partner Kevin, and just kind of hearing stories about the Albany music scene. And of course, you guys are very well known from the Albany music scene, and I started playing some of your songs on the air every so often. I think the first time I played Lifeguard, a couple days later, I got an email from you. You're like, "Hey, it's F. Lee Harvey Blotto," and I was in my office and I made some kind of noise that I think sounded like "ah."
Well, what happened was my cousin Elsa lives over in Accord, and she listens to DST. She was listening to you. And she emails me and she goes, "There's this chick on the radio named MK who said she's been trying to get a hold of Lee Harvey Blotto and she hasn't been able to." And I'm like, what? And so, and so I sent you an email. Then I found out that, that your mom's partner is Kevin, who's one of my favorite people in the whole world. I'm like, oh my God, what a small world this is.
Yeah, yeah. Who also, by the way, I have every intention of getting Kevin on this podcast soon too. I'm sure he's also got some stories.
Kevin, like 10 years ago, Kevin made the best late 80s album ever made.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, it just sounds like late 70s Bowie. And I'm not saying that in a derivative sense. It just sounds amazing. I mean, he's just a wizard in the studio. And that, when he put that record out, I mean, I was DJing at the time, and I was playing the crap out of that on the radio station I helped run up in Great Barrington, and people would call and go, "Who is this?" And I'm going, "This is a brand new record. This is my friend Kevin."
Yes, Songs for the Big Kablooey. You should all look it up, everybody out there listening. It is really terrific, and it's amazing because he did the entire thing himself, I believe. There's like maybe some background vocals that he didn't do, but the vocals, all of the instruments, producing, mixing, like a one-man operation pretty much.
And it just drips attitude and ennui, and I mean, it's a perfect piece of music. I still listen to it a lot to this day.
Yeah, that was also in regular rotation on my local music program, and still in occasional rotation on my Spotify as well. But we'll talk about Kevin when I talk to Kevin. Let's talk about some Blotto. So can you tell me about the early days of the band for the uninitiated?
The band grew out of the demise of a group called the Star Spangled Washboard Band, who were an Albany area, very high energy, very hippie, very, I would say, acid influenced, jug band, bluegrass band. I mean, they were kind of a combination of Flatt and Scruggs and the Firesign Theater. They were very funny, hysterical, and they toured the country and Canada sort of nonstop from the early 70s to the late 70s. I think they hung it up in 1978, and all moved back to Albany, all got apartments, all got jobs, and said, we're not doing showbiz anymore. We're going to do other stuff. And then a few weeks into that, Cheese, who was then known as Cheese, he's now known as Cheese Blotto, called him up and said, my friend's got a bar in Saratoga. Let's just show up there and jam on a weekend and see what happens. So they started playing one weekend a month in Saratoga Springs at a little club called 17 Maple Avenue. It was kind of a biker bar, and in the back was a basement room with an old building. It had stone walls, and that quickly became known as the Blotto Grotto. They all adopted Blotto as a surname, like the Ramones. So there's Broadway and Blanche Blotto and Bowtie Blotto and Sarge Blotto. They had a drummer whose name was Johnny Blotton, who one weekend disappeared. They couldn't find him, and so I got a call on a Thursday night that this band Blotto was, needed a drummer for the weekend up in Saratoga Springs, and could I do it? And I'm like, and there's the sax player who was playing with them at the time. I was playing in another band with. He said, just come do it. You'll have a blast. And I'm going, I've never seen the band. I don't know the songs. He goes, you'll know the songs better than they do. I mean, they were doing mostly really weird 60s covers and then a bunch of stuff from this washboard band repertoire.
Okay.
And they were drawing big crowds. So he said, just show up, get there at like 6 and set up, but you got to have a Blotto name. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so, I sat there. I was working for the state at the time, and I made a list of potential Blotto names, and I sent it around. It was at the Department of Public Service, Office of Research, and I sent a circulating memo. I said, I need a name for my gig tonight, so please pick one. And Lee Harvey Blotto was the unanimous choice of the Office of Research, and so that became my name. It was supposed to be my name for the weekend.
Right.
You know, if I'd known 42 years later that people would still be referring to me as Lee Harvey, I might have picked something a little more tasteful. But that wasn't even my favorite. My favorite name was Sirhan Blotto Blotto.
You would have overshadowed everybody with that one.
But you know, Lee Harvey it was, and I played, and in the first song, I just took a look over at the bass player at Cheese, and we were just locked in from the first note. And he's looking at me smiling, I'm looking at him smiling, and I'm like, this is it, you know, this, and we were doing, you know, the set would be like a James Brown, you know, James Brown, I Got You, followed by Dusty Springfield, I Only Want to Be With You, followed by Ballad of the Green Berets. I mean, it was just an insane bunch of 60s songs. And, you know, and the band was camping everything up. I mean, they were just so much fun to play with that, you know, this became a going thing. So we were getting a following. We were, you know, packing them in Saratoga Springs. We were starting to play in Albany and around and drawing crowds. And we decided in '79 to make a demo so that we could play larger clubs. Basically, we wanted to just have a couple of songs on cassette that we could take and say, here, you know, this is what we do, book us. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of this recording session it was Arabellum Studios, I think, which, you know, Kevin, who we just talked about, had something to do with forming. It was related to a prog band that he had in the early 70s. Ah. And we were recording, my first time in a recording studio, and we were right in the middle of doing these sessions, and we were having a rehearsal. And Broadway Blotto, who's the lead guitarist and kind of the MC of the band, came in. He goes, you know, I've got this idea for a song called I Want to Be a Lifeguard. And he kind of played through it and said, you know, this is where the harmonies are. This is where this goes. This is where that goes. And he goes, I want it to start with like a surf beat. And so I just started playing the intro. You know, it's basically Wipeout with a couple of, you know, beats moved around. Yeah. And I said, how's that? And he goes, that's it. And the song, and then he, you know, we get to the chorus and he's going, I want to be a lifeguard. I'd like to have like a Greek chorus answer. And I'm going, but you know, what should they sing? And I said, well, how about help, help, help? And he's going, that's it. I mean, and the song literally came together in about 5 minutes. And I believe that weekend or the weekend after, and this was like October of '79, we recorded it. We recorded it before we ever played it live. And so that wound up, you know, the lead song on the record. And we decided, well, you know, for $1,000 or so, we can press up 1,000 records, and that'll be more impressive than, you know, sending cassettes around. So let's do that. And we had this great graphic from a poster that Sarge made with the Blotto lady with the drum on her head, which we were using for posters and stuff. So we stuck her on the cover. And then, you know, in February of 1980, a big truck pulled up to my apartment in Albany, and 1,000 12-inch records were delivered, which, you know, those boxes are heavy. Yeah. And I carried them all up to my second floor flat in Albany. And I called the guys. I'm going, what are we going to do with these? I mean, we're not going to sell them. I mean, you know, I got 1,000 records in my kitchen. And so we said, well, let's just, you know, send them out to radio stations because, you know, we'll just pay the postage and put them in mailers and send them out. So that's what we did. We set up like an assembly line, and we had playlists from radio stations all over the country, from, you know, record industry, radio industry magazines. And if a college stations got them, we sent them to a whole bunch of college stations, and commercial stations. I mean, radio in 1980. If it was like an Abrams station, if it was playing Foreigner and Journey, they didn't get a record. But if they were playing the B-52s, or the Talking Heads, they got a record.
Totally.
And so we sent them out. One of the records we sent to Vin Skelsa at WNEW, who's the music director at the legendary radio station WNEW, who was an old fan of the Star Spangled Washboard Band. So we made sure that he got one. And then, all was quiet for a month or two. We were getting airplay in Albany, but we were all friends with all the radio people in Albany. So, of course, they were playing us. And that would have been good enough. I mean, we got on the radio. And then sometime, I think it was April, or it might have been late March, early April, I was in New York City with my girlfriend at the time, and we're driving around. We were lost. It was like 11 o'clock on a Friday night. And we're driving around, and we're listening to WNEW. And they were playing a song by the B-52s. And I looked at my girlfriend. I said, "Geez, Blotto would sound great after this. Wouldn't Lifeguard sound great?" And she goes, "Yeah, it really would." And it was the B-52 song was 52 Girls. They were playing, and we turned onto Waverly, right by the Waverly Theater, and there was a line of people. It was like 11:30 at night, and there was a line of people to get into the theater. I think they were doing like Rocky Picture Horror Show midnight show or something. But there's all these people, and I'm going, look at all those people, and the B-52s fade out, and wouldn't you know it, Blotto sounded great. After that, the song came on, and I just I almost peed myself. I'm screaming. All these people are on the sidewalk jumping back. Here's a guy screaming in a blue car, in the middle of, Waverly Place. And I lost feeling in my legs, and I almost rear-ended the guy in front of me. And, I said, I got to find a phone, because we're getting played on the station that broke REM, that broke Devo, that broke the Ramones, and things are just not going to be the same after this. And there we had it. And the woman, Meg Griffin, I believe, was the DJ, and she's going, "Well, you got this record, and it's a lady with a drum on her head, and it says, 'Hello, my name is Blotto. What's yours?' And you turn it over." And listen to this. It's like Sarge Blotto on vocals, Broadway Blotto on guitar, Bowtie Blotto on guitar, Blanche Blotto on vocals, Cheese Blotto on bass. And then she pauses and she goes, "And New York City, are you ready for Lee Harvey Blotto on drums?" And I'm like going, Jesus, I mean, this is like, I tell my clients, I hope you have a moment like this, this kind of reaffirming moment where, what you do gets accepted on this level. I mean, it was insane. And the next thing you know, we were getting booked. Our first New York gig was at a club called Snafu in Chelsea, which was basically a drag bar. But Lou Friedman, who was also a drag queen named Holly Woodlawn, owned the club, and he was a Washboard Band fan. So he booked us right away. And then a month later, we played at the opening of the Ritz on 2nd Avenue. And at this point, we're all still working day jobs and stuff and just trying to figure out what's going on. And here we are at the Ritz. And the morning of the show, Michael Musto's gossip column in the Village Voice, he just said, I went to the soft opening for the Ritz, and this club is beautiful. It's the Studio 54 of the 80s, and if you want to see and be seen, go to the Ritz. So we get to the Ritz to set up, and there's limos lining the block. And we're like, what's going on? And, it was sold out, and it was raucous. It was crazy. Um, I was told Barbara Walters was there. Our crazy friend Henry was walking around the crowd yelling, Brooke Shields, it's Brooke Shields. He was just yelling that. And the next day, the New York Daily News reported that Brooke Shields was in the audience to see Blotto. I mean, she was like freaking 12 at the time,
Yeah.
but and it got reported, so it must be true.
Yeah, of course.
And so there it went. We all came back to Albany, despite the fact that everybody else in the band decided they were never going to get into showbiz again. We all quit our jobs and off we went.
Wow.
And so we had that ridiculous amount of great luck. I mean, talent and having good songs and good looks is great. I mean, it's like required, but not to say we were a particularly good-looking band, but you know what I mean. We tried, but luck is just probably the most important factor. And when we went and met with Vin Scelsa, the music director at NEW later, he said, "Yeah, I had this pile of records on my desk, and yours just caught my eye. And then I read the letter, and I said, oh yeah, those guys." And I put it on the turntable in my office, and I listened to the first 30 seconds and went, "We're going to make this one a hit." And he said, I took it in to the DJ who was playing and said, "We're playing this record, and we're going to keep playing it all summer." And they did. It was getting played 3 or 4 times a day on NEW, and it just broke everything wide open for us.
That is amazing. That's an incredible story. Thank you for telling it. Yeah, the first thought that pops into my head, because, I was a music director, albeit in a much smaller market. And yeah, for anybody out there who is in a band and trying to get their song heard, trying to send stuff to radio stations to get airplay. And of course, things are a little bit different now. Like not that it doesn't matter if you get airplay, but, it's not necessarily the number one way that a band gets broken, but it's still important.
Right.
And if you're wondering what it takes to get noticed, packaging is so important, because I can vouch. Like, I got 1 million CDs, sometimes records. I got 1 million emails that I had to open and look at every day with new music in them. And, just a shot of the band, in front of their truck or whatever just doesn't catch your eye, really. Maybe it's nice and it's a nice photograph and y'all look good, but yeah, like, you had a very dynamic logo, and the "hello, my name is Blotto, what's yours?" That would have been irresistible to me too. Like, oh, like this record is having a conversation with me. Of course I'm going to give it a listen. I had a couple like that where there was just these weird, like, left field designs that really caught my eye, and I was like, all right, I'll give this a listen. And sometimes it wasn't great, but other times I was like, oh, you know what? This is good. I'm going to give this a few spins. And so really think about your packaging, to all you young bands out there.
Yeah, and it's kind of undefinable, It's just like, and it really depends, you, the music director, it's going to depend on all sorts of things, like what mood you're in, whether you enjoyed your lunch, whether you had an argument with your boyfriend the night before. But, if you go in and you see something and you listen to it and you decide you like it, I mean, that's what makes the difference. And that's what worked for us.
Yeah.
And then the second part of the whole thing was the following January or February. This would have been 1981. We were playing, and at this point we're touring, and there was one club in Albany called J.B. Scott's, which you may have heard of, which is a legendary 800 capacity showcase club. U2's second gig was there, and then they came back and played again the following year. And they just got everybody there, and we were the hometown band, and so we were playing there like once a month. And a couple of college kids came up to us and said, we're taking a media course and we have to do a media project. and we'd like to do a little movie based on I Want to Be a Lifeguard. And we're like, yeah, let's do it, just for a student project. And so we made up storyboards, and we got some friends from the Empire State Youth Theater to come and do cameo roles. And so we ran around, downtown Albany. We ran around the Empire State Plaza. We spent a day shooting at the $1 Million Beach in Lake George. And by the time we were shooting, I think it was April. And if you look at the lifeguard video, the long shots on the beach, you'll notice there's no leaves on the trees. It was like 50 degrees, and we're running around in bathing suits.
Yeah.
We were supposed to go in the water up to our knees, and that was just not happening. I mean, we went up to our ankles, and it was torture.
Yeah.
But these guys were really great, and they shot the video. We did, I don't know, 10 or 12 different locations and a bunch of live footage from J.B. Scott's. And, that was their student project. They got an A in their class.
Yeah.
And then in June, they called us up and said, hey, some friends of ours just got hired to work at this new company called Music Television down in New York. And, we don't know anything about it, but they asked if they could have a copy of the lifeguard video, for this new cable station. And we said, yeah, the video cost us $32, which was lunch in Lake George for, 8 people. And so we said, yeah, why not? Just go for it. And then on August 1st of 1981, MTV launches, and we were, I think, the 33rd video played. We came on right after Iron Maiden's Wrathchild.
That's a funny mix. That's a funny choice by whoever was putting that playlist together. But yeah, I mean, that's incredible. I had no idea it was a student project.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and those guys were great. They did our next 2 videos as well. And so that, we were already getting airplay kind of sporadically around the country with Lifeguard and our follow-up record, Across and Down. But it's hard to sort of overemphasize how important it was to be on MTV, because we were nationwide, and we were touring, and we'd be in Kansas, and the guy pumping gas at the gas station would recognize us from MTV because, back then, like you said, there's a lot of competition these days between video games and radio and online stuff. But back then there was radio, which was, most parts of the country was pretty dismal. And there was MTV, and so, people would see us and, and I can tell to this day, whether somebody was an MTV watcher in 1980, 81, 82.
Really?
Because I'll tell them, I played in a band. What's the name of the band? And I'd say Blotto. And some people would go, oh, that's interesting. And, and I'm going, that person wasn't watching MTV. And other people go, Blotto! And they start screaming and jumping up and down. And when they were 10 or 12 years old, they'd get home from work and they'd turn on MTV and watch it for 4 hours, and so that became a thing. I mean, interestingly, 2 years ago, and as an example of this, 2 years ago, the Beastie Boys book came out. And it was this big oral history of the Beastie Boys by the two surviving members. And at the very end of the book, they each put in a playlist of like the 200 songs that influenced us. And one of them included Blotto's I Want to Be a Lifeguard.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. They kind of had that like sense of like irreverence and humor and just kind of yeah, I think there's a similar attitude there.
But in their book, they talk about when they were like in junior high school. They would go home to and they would all like meet at one of their family's apartments and watch MTV. And there we were, and in their strange little minds, they're watching this, going, "Hey,
Yeah.
those guys, those guys are cool."
Something connected for them. Yeah. Yeah. Man, yeah. So, I mean, what's the Blotto legacy like for you now? I mean, are you still like, how do you think about it now when you look back?
I, there's not a day that goes by that something doesn't come up. Um, that's just interesting, or someone makes a comment, or I hear from someone that I've didn't know, going, "Oh yeah, Blotto, you guys were great," and it works in my professional life. It's funny because I'm in upstate New York, and I'm an intellectual property entertainment attorney,
Hmm.
and I deal a lot with attorneys in New York City who generally try to big time me. I mean, they see, I was practicing in Albany for a while. I was practicing in the Berkshires for a while. Now I'm in the Hudson Valley. And, the attorneys would just assume that I'm a rube from upstate New York, who doesn't really know anything about entertainment law. And sometimes I have to like yell at them to get them to shut up. And then they go, "Oh, well, I guess you know something about this stuff." And I'm going, "Yeah, damn right I do.
Yeah.
Listen, this is what we're talking about." And then the next phone call I have, this guy who was being a real hard ass would go, "I did some research, and I know who you are."
I Googled you.
And he's going, "Yeah, we used to go see you at my father's place, or at Stony Brook when I was in college, and you guys were so funny, and we were so drunk, and blah, blah." So the guy goes from being an adversary to being a fanboy. Um, and this happens repeatedly.
Yeah.
And, it's fun. And so the legacy such as it is, just in the last few months, we've received, 2 live radio broadcasts that we did, that we had forgotten that we did, and that we didn't have copies of.
Yeah.
And
So are you going to release
got-
those?
And we're going to release them. Right now we have 4 full concerts that were broadcast on the radio. One was on WLIR, and it was live at my father's place. One was from Syracuse University, from the Jabberwocky, and it broadcast on WAER in, I think, 1981.
Mm-hmm.
One was a BBC Rock Hour we did at the Chance in Poughkeepsie in 1982 or 83. And then one that we just got like 2 weeks ago. It's from a little club called the Country House down in Westchester, and that's from 1980. And these things just sound great, and there's weird cover versions of stuff that we never released. And they're all very different in terms of energy. I mean, you can just kind of see how the band evolved. But we're packaging them up right now, and we'll have them all out on Spotify and elsewhere by the end of the year. But I'm really excited about that. And whether it amounts to anything or not in these days, I don't know. I mean, I look at our numbers on Spotify, and like 80% of the people listening to us are between the ages of 55 and 70. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, that makes sense, I suppose, but it would be nice to cross over to a different demographic, and I think we have the material that could make that happen.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited to hear this stuff. And who sent it to you? Like you said, somebody just like from the radio station was just like, "Hey, we found this."
Yes, some guy who used the country house one from Westchester, the most recent one. Some guy I think he worked at the radio station and he had the files and he goes, I just wanted you guys to know I had the files and here it is. And we're like, oh my God, you know. The one from Syracuse, I have to admit that every couple of months I will go and Google like lifeguard Blotto and just see what pops up.
Yeah.
And I don't overdo it because that would be vain and narcissistic. But you know, every 4 or 5 months, and every time I do it, I find something else that I hadn't seen before. Some mention in a magazine article or something. And I was like 9 or 10 pages in, and there was this site, this download concert site, a bootleg site out of Montreal, and it said Blotto, Syracuse, 1981. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And so I bought it. I'm like, what the heck? You know, I'll pay $10,
Yeah.
you know. And it was an hour-long concert from the Jabberwocky in Syracuse.
Man.
And
could you
so-
remember like exactly which show it was? Like you remember playing the specific concert?
Vaguely. I remember I think we played the Jabberwocky 2 or 3 times, and I think this was probably the second time. But it was hot. I mean, and live recordings can be tricky, but you know, some of these radio stations did them a lot and had really, you know, talented people mixing because it's all being done on the fly. It's being broadcast live.
Yeah.
But you know, the crowd sounded hot. I mean, the band sounded hot, and I'm just like, wow, this is, you know, this we have to put this out. You know, if only for just our hardcore fans. You know, this is something.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you got a hold of them, and I'm glad you are releasing them. So you said probably by the end of the year they're coming out?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Now, I think we want to squeeze in a couple of tracks here. So what am I allowed to play on the podcast, Paul?
MK, you can play whatever you want, but
Yeah?
I mean, we probably ought to play Lifeguard.
Selling shoes, another loser.
Working in a shopping mall.
9 to 5, a slave driver telling me, get on the ball. A crowded store, I kneel before them.
Misery beyond compare.
Sweaty socks, a lady boxer. What she got against fresh air? I want an ocean and some sunscreen lotion. Take me to the beach with 1,000 pretty girls in reach. I wanna be a lifeguard.
Help, 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 help.
I wanna guard your life. convert the feet into meters, marking distance at the swimming pool. Summer blondes revealing tan lines. I'll make more moves than
Alias and line.
I wanna be a
Be a big man
lifeguard.
now, get a great tan now.
I wanna guard your life. I wanna be a lifeguard.
Lifeguard, lifeguard,
Sitting on my chair
lifeguard,
in the salty air.
lifeguard.
White stuff on my nose. I wanna be a
Help, help,
lifeguard.
help, 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 help.
I wanna guard your life. I wanna be a lifeguard.
Lifeguard, lifeguard,
Lounging on the deck,
lifeguard,
whistle around my neck,
lifeguard.
white stuff in my nose. I wanna be a lifeguard.
Lifeguard, lifeguard.
You know, and it's funny because this is something that's kind of there's the original Lifeguard on the 4-song EP, which it sounds like an amateur record. There's a naive charm to it, I think, which is why it became so popular on the radio. It doesn't sound like anything else. And it's kind of a function of us not knowing what we were doing, but you know, we wound up with this kind of cool sounding, unique record. If you go to YouTube and find the Blotto video, it's a different version that we recorded the summer of 1980 while we were recording Across and Down. We just went and quickly recorded Lifeguard, and we decided that version was more rock and roll and sounded better. So that's on with the video. And then on our second CD, Then More Than Ever, there's a live version, which was from the BBC Rock Hour recording that we did at the Chance. And they're all, you know, there's good things to be said for all of them, but and I don't know which one is the most popular, whether the original studio version or the video version. Probably the video version, but you know, whichever one, you know, suits your fancy. And then the other song, you know, I mean, Lifeguard, I think, you know, can definitely be talked about as a hit, as an underground hit. But Metalhead is the other. I should probably talk about Metalhead.
Yeah, I'm very partial to Metalhead.
So, oh God. So we at some point in 81 or 82, we hooked up with Bob Clearmountain. It was the great rock and roll producer. I mean, he mixed the Rolling Stones, Roxy Music, and Excess, Bryan Adams. The list just goes on and on. Started with Nile Rodgers and Chic at the Power Station. But Bob was a fan of ours. And he goes, I want to work with you guys. And so we wound up spending a night in Atlantic Studios, in the studio that Aretha recorded Respect in, and with Bob Clearmountain, big, important, famous rock producer, who's one of the most unassuming, nice people in the world. And we recorded 2 songs, and he had Atlantic Records, you know, waiting to hear these Clearmountain demos. And Clearmountain was ready to do an entire album with us. And so that's where the song, When the Second Feature Starts, came from, was from the Bob Clearmountain sessions. And he mixed it back at the Power Station, and it sounded, you know, we sounded for the first time like this is a real big label record. I mean, it just, everything sounded correct because Clearmountain's a genius. And he sent it over to Dick Morris at Atlantic Records. And I'll never forget, we were sitting in our lawyer's office. Our lawyer was Ina Mybeck, who's a legendary music attorney. And she knew Dick Morris at Atlantic. They had like houses, like they were neighbors in the Hamptons or some damn thing. And she calls and goes, well, Dick, you know, you've got Blotto's demo. What do you think? And Dick Morris goes, well, Ina, you know, Atlantic Records is going in a different direction than Blotto, and I think I'm going to pass. You know, and I'm thinking, what direction are we going in?
Yeah,
you know?
How do you know?
What direction are you going in? And you know, and then she goes, well, could you send back the materials I sent you? Because he got the vinyl and the photographs and the tapes and the, you know. And she goes, you know, the band is really on a shoestring here, and you know, could you send the materials back so we can send it to somebody else? And he goes, Ina, I'm going to ask you for a favor because I'd really like to keep this stuff because Blotto is my kid's favorite band.
Aw. How's he going to pass on you guys when it's his kid's favorite band?
Yeah. I'm like, you know, I just want to say, Dickie, you going to tell him you just passed on Blotto?
Yeah.
You know, Christ. So anyways, in the ensuing months, Atlantic released a whole bunch of hair band metal albums. You know, White Snake and White Lion and White Castle and White this and, you know, all this spandex, you know, poofed out hair, you know, metal music. And, you know, we just said, okay, if that's what they want, we'll do it.
Strange sensations coming over me, something I can't explain. Suddenly there's an endless void where I used to keep my brain. I gotta see a doctor, but I'm too wasted to phone one. Wanna customize my van and I don't even own one. I get up in the morning and I wanna shave my chest, get myself a skull tattoo, wear a denim vest. My friends are getting worried, they don't know me anymore.
And so, so, so we wrote Metalhead, which is totally over the top heavy metal song with goofy lyrics, and we were in a studio down in White Plains, and we were recording our album Combo Akimbo, and we were just about to start recording Metalhead, and one morning into the studio walks Buck Dharma from Blue Oyster Cult, who was doing a solo album and was looking for studios to work in, and someone told him this was a good studio. I think Ace Frehley was a part owner, had some interest in this studio, and I think Buck was there because of that connection. So Buck walks in. I'd met him years before. He didn't remember. I'd met him at a show in the 70s. But he walks in and he sees our road cases and he goes, "Hey, it's Blotto." And we're going, "Yeah." And he looks and he points at and he goes, "I Want to Be a Lifeguard is my second favorite song of all time." And we're like, "Really? What's your first favorite song?" And he goes, "Come On Down to My Boat, Baby" by Every Mother's Son. And we're like, not only is he Buck Dharma from Blue Oyster Cult, but he's one of us.
Yeah.
I mean, he's, he just got this twinkle in his eye. And so we had a demo for Metalhead. And I remember we said, "Listen to this." And he put on headphones and he's listening and he's laughing. And he's going, "Oh, this is great." And he gets done, he goes, "Man, that was great." And we said, "Well, we're sorry that we stole the riff." He goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "The whole riff for Metalhead was stolen from your song Cities on Flame." And he goes, "Oh, yeah. Well, we stole that from Black Sabbath, so don't worry about it." And he goes, "Can I produce this for you guys?" And we're like, "Only if you play the solo." And he goes, "Done." And so he came in with a bunch of outboard gear, and he produced Metalhead and played the solo. And when it became time to do the video, he appeared in the video. And then, as fate would have it, we both had the same booking agent at the time, so they paired us together, which was probably not the greatest idea in the world, but, they paired us together. And so that was the Blot and Blue tour of 1983.
Oh, that's funny.
We kind of stormed the Midwest with, us opening for Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah. What did the crowds, how was their reaction? Were they into it?
The farther we got away from, Albany and New York, the better it was. Mm-hmm. Around Albany. I remember our first show in I think it was in Utica. I mean, people were throwing stuff at us because they all knew Blotto from Lifeguard.
Oh my
and they
God.
just thought we were this goofy band. And then, we played in Pennsylvania and it wasn't that much better. We played in Maryland. It was a little better. But we got out to the Midwest where all they knew was MTV and they all knew Metalhead. They treated us like heroes.
Amazing.
It was really a funny the kind of range of reactions that we got was very interesting.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of the hometown effect.
Yeah.
Oh God. Well, Paul, that is I'm speechless. That was we're pretty much at our time, and I want to ask you a bunch more questions, but my Squarespace site won't let me upload episodes that are over an hour and a half. So
Okay.
I want to thank you again for coming on tonight. I feel like I've heard the whole story now, pretty much.
Oh, there's more.
That'll be part 2. But
no, thanks a lot. I mean, it's always it's just gratifying, to 40 years on to know that people are still interested. It's kind of like, it's reaffirming. It's kind of what every artist dreams of, and it's just nice. So thank you.
Yeah, well, Blotto is exceptionally lovable. There's something about the music and just the whole vibe you guys were putting out that is lasting and kind of timeless. So yeah, I'm a fan. I know a lot of other young musicians around here who are fans. In fact, you sent me a little care package at the radio station with a couple of T-shirts, and I gave one of them away to a friend of mine who's in a great band around here called Ramona Lane, because he was so excited when he heard that I had been in touch with you. I was like, here you go. Here's a Blotto shirt for you, and he wears it at shows. So.
Oh, that's great.
So once again, the newly discovered radio concerts are going to be released by the end of the year. Where can folks go to find out about that? Is there a Blotto website that's being updated, or how do you keep people, up on stuff?
Yeah, our website is blotto.net. Somebody got blotto.com before us, so we're relegated to blotto.net. We have a Facebook page. And, you can just, friend me on Facebook, and you'll get more information than you need.
That's a brave offer to make on a public format. But well, Paul Rapp, I will see you around Kingston, and we'll talk to you on the Blotto story part 2.
Great. Thanks, MK.